Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. I can see a lot of students over there. Could you please come over here? Yeah, because most of network security students are over there. So could you please come here? Alright, because we are going to have a very informative talk. Okay, before that, saya yang berbahagia Dato Dr. Narimah Awin, Pengerusi Lembaga Penduduk Pembangunan Keluarga. So bersama dengan kita adalah Dr. Hisham Yahya Al-Talib, Presiden International Institute of Islamic Thought. Speakers, panel untuk sesi pertama tadi, dan juga pelajar-pelajar sekalian. Izinkan saya untuk berbicara dalam bahasa Inggeris. Okay. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this prestigious convention, which is known as Konvensyen Stop Kebangsaan, Cabaran Media Sosial dalam Pembangunan Generasi. In this session, we would like to have a keynote speech from Dr. Hisham Yahya Al-Talib, President of the International Institute of Islamic Thought. My name is Professor Zuriatia Mazukarnain. I am Deputy Dean of Faculty Computer Science and Information Technology UPM, and I'll be serving as moderator for this session. Before the presentation begins, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Hisham Yahya Al-Talib, President of International Institute of Islamic Thought. Okay. Dr. Hisham Yahya Al-Talib was born in Mosul, Iraq in 1940. I just browsed his website to get in closely about him. He is actually graduated in 1962 with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from University Liverpool, UK. So I was not born during this time. Dr. Al-Talib worked as an electrical engineer with the Iraqi Petroleum Company from 1962 to 1968. He obtained his Master's Science University Ohio and PhD from University of Purdue, United States in Electrical Engineering in 1974. Yes, in this year I was born, right? So throughout his career as an electrical engineer, Dr. Al-Talib was active in Islamic work in North America and continues to work in this field today. So Dr. Al-Talib became the first full director of the training department of the Muslim Student Association of the United States and Canada from 1975 to 1977. Dr. Al-Talib conducted numerous training camps and seminars in the US and abroad. He held several leadership positions in Islamic organizations, such as Secretary General of the International Islamic Federation of Student Organization in 1976. Dr. Al-Talib also founding member and director of the SAR Foundation in 1983 to 1995. He was also a founding member of the International Institute of Islamic Thought in 1981 and is currently the president of the International Institute of Islamic Thought, known as IIT. Dr. Al-Talib continues to mentor and inspire people of all ages and continues his focus on research-based development and education. He wrote such books including the Training Guide for Islamic Workers, Parent-Child Relations, and the Da'wah Covenant of Honor that are very important and beneficial for leaders, parents, and communities. Ladies and gentlemen, now moving along to our session, please welcome our honorable keynote speaker, Dr. Hisham Yahya Al-Talib, the President of IIT, who will be speaking to us on pornography, combating the epidemic.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد عليه الصلاة والسلام. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We are going to speak about pornography? You know, the first thing you speak about any subject is you define it, right? However, when you ask social scientists to define anything, whether it's development or culture or civic society or program, whatever, they will give you 50 different definitions and they confuse you rather than they enlighten you. I have known a lecturer, for example, in my studies, while you go in with whatever little knowledge you have, and the professor has lots of knowledge, you listen to him for 1 hour, or her, after that you come out more confused, and you know less about the subject. However, so what I will do, I'll confuse you in the beginning of many academic definitions, then I will solve the problem with you with 7 words. What is pornography? Okay? Pornography originates from the Greek term pornographos, which means writing about prostitutes. The word pornography is being used since the middle of the 19th century. According to Merriam-Webster dictionary, pornography is the depiction of erotic behavior, as in pictures and writing, intended to cause sexual excitement. Another definition is this one, but the very nature of this is evident. Pornography is nudity in photos, videos that is intended to stimulate sexual desire. Visual materials that is designed to cause sexual arousal. There are also pornographic stories, so it could be in a written form too. Legally, there is a distinction between nude art and pornography. Art is supposed to make the viewer more civilized. However, unfortunately, the Western civilization, the Greek, the Roman, and so on, they depicted pictures and statues of men and women in public naked. So that is, of course, the opposite of the Islamic civilization, which was also talking about art and the way you write the letters in mosque and in an infinite, rotational way and so on. Okay, so what is pornography? They asked a goldsmith, how do you know gold? He said, define it to us. He couldn't define it. But he said, I know it when I see it. So this is my definition of, it is so clear that I know, everybody knows it when he or she sees it. But I want to tell you, sisters and brothers, pornography is a very serious problem. According to the US Department of Justice, never before in the history of media has so much indecent and obscene material been so easily accessible by so many minors with so few restrictions. Brothers and sisters, first time in the history since Adam and Hawa alayhi salam till now, your child knows more data and big data than yourself. This has never happened before. It's all in here. They term it also now as the new drug. The new drug. This material is more aggressive, more harmful, more violent, more degrading and damaging than any other time in the history of the world. And this generation growing up is dealing with it to an intensity and scale no other generation in the history of the world has ever had to. This is by Clay Olson, co-founder and CEO of Fight the New Drug. What's the impact? It perpetuates evil. Pornography is intended to make the viewer seek more pornography in an unending cycle of addiction and illegitimate pursuits. It makes your emotion take over your mind. Pornography distances us from our Creator and the Quran al-Karim. By looking at the private parts, which we call it awra, as you know, of others, we disobey Allah's commands. Pornography involves illegal acts committed against women and children particularly. It encourages violence against women and children and spreads lewdness. Also the impact. Pornography promotes homosexuality and lesbianism through gay and lesbian porns. Pornography inflames raging hormones without positive results. It clouds judgment and stimulates without guidance. It's like drugs, like wine and so on. Pornography has no value. It violates contemporary community standards and has no literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. It's evil, it is shar. Effects on adults, male and female. Number one, damages relationships. That's according to National Center on Sex Exploitation. It creates unrealistic expectations between partners, between husband and wives. Greater acceptance of sex before marriage. Encourages impulsive behaviors and immediate gratification. It causes having multiple sex partners. Increases promiscuity. Increasing the desire to engage in group sex. Compels individual to find a newer way to satisfy themselves. Let me tell you here a story that when I was studying in Liverpool, England, there was an Irishman in the newspaper writing about beer. He said, 1 cup is too much of beer, 1 barrel is not enough. And this is the nature of a human being. They get desensitized. You try a little sin, na'udhu billah, it's not very, sinful. Then you are not satisfied. You go to a greater one and a greater one. Just like this Irishman said, when you start, one cup of beer is too much for you. But then you go on and on and then until a whole barrel does not satisfy you. So that's the problem. It compels individual to find newer ways to satisfy themselves. More likely to have an affair. Makes people feel unsatisfied in traditional and marital relationships. Let me tell you another story. My wife is a medical doctor, like our great lady here. And she had a colleague in the University of Baghdad, medical medicine, University in Baghdad. And then they graduated, they lived in America, and she had 3 children in America with another Iraqi husband, and so on, everything fine. They had problems among themselves, so they called me and my wife, because they know us, to solve the problem. I was shocked to hear that this lady, Dr. Salman, I said, what make you all this trouble? She said, when I got married, I thought that marriage is just like we see the celebrities on the TV. It's a very nice thing. Having children, laughing and so on. I thought there is no responsibility for this. So that's what happens, when you go into these things. Unfortunately, you get different expectations and different meaning. Effects on adults, male and female. It spurs criminal behavior, according to the National Center on Sex Exploitation. It leads to illegal acts. It starts something, very little legal, but then it grows and becomes illegal. More acceptance of violence against women urges one to engage in more sexual harassment behaviors. Now, you see, this is so common on the TV in America. Every day you see sexual harassment. Great people, then they fall down because of sexual harassments 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, then they fall down from fame. Engaging in date rape and marital rape too. Being an adult sex offender, a child molester, and or an incest offender, one becomes a threat to those around him and society at large. Effects on children. Internet has become the leading sex educator today, not parents or other educational programs. 90% of youth ages 12 to 18 are using the internet. 90%. Give children unrealistic ideas about sex. Children are engaging in sexual act at younger ages, more than any other time in history. Sexual violence is appropriate. They think it becomes appropriate. Idea that the opposite gender, especially women, should be subjected to men. Negatively impacts their ability to develop healthy relationships. It becomes difficult to form intimate relationship beyond sexual arousal and pleasure. You know, when you start doing these things, again, another example in my life at the University of Liverpool, I had a Persian friend in my class, very close friend, Dato Dr. He used to date, British ladies, maybe every week one more, every week another different one. So I was trying, to coach him and to advise him, and because I really loved him. Now, one day after 2 years, he came to me, he said, Hisham, I envy you. I said, why? He said, because when you get married, you will enjoy this sexual relationship with your wife, because it is the first time. It is the only thing you know. You really enjoy it and love it. He said, for me, it's just like another woman. I don't look forward to it. So as I said, it becomes difficult to form intimate relationship beyond sexual arousal and pleasure. Increases in societal ills, sexually transmitted diseases, and teen pregnancy. Having children is a big disaster for the family and the whole society. STD, sexually transmitted disease. Let me give you a practical example from America. Atlanta, Georgia, there was a suburb there called Conyers area, around Atlanta city in Georgia. This is a practical example. In 1996, an outbreak of syphilis struck a group of teenagers in the affluent community of Conyers near Atlanta, Georgia. When the epidemiologists from the CDC, Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, a very famous one, highly reliable research, they interviewed the victims. They were shocked. Children as young as 14 were left unsupervised in their homes when their parents did not care what they did. They watched pornography on their home television sets, resulting in destructive behavior. Scores of sexual partners, out-of-control orgies, and teenager sex parties. The roots of the Conyers syphilis epidemic lie in the easy access to pornography and reveals community that did not properly educate their children and ended up struggling with teenager drug use, sex, aimlessness, and criticism. We come to some statistics. I think we don't need to go through detailed statistics. Maybe just one, this about the countries. There are top countries. Who are the top 10 countries hosting porn website pages on their websites? Number one is the US, 428 million pages. 428 million pages in the websites in America are about pornography. The second country, Netherlands, 187 million pages. In the United Kingdom, 52 million pages. In Germany, 8 million pages. In France, 5 million pages. Then you come Australia, Canada, Japan, British Virgin Islands, Czech Republics, and so on. So it's very pervasive, unfortunately. Now, the problem is pornography has permeated and invaded all kinds of groups, all faiths. No faith is, protected from. It is practiced by all. Practiced by all religions, seculars, of course, men, women, married, bachelors, used in the office, while in working hours. All right, phones, tables, and it is increasing. Now, we have responsibilities in several areas, several segments. First of all, it's the parents. They have big responsibility in educating and preventing pornography. Stop pornography. Islam teaches us to treat human beings as civilized and beautiful creatures who have brains and emotions and lofty goals. The body should be respected, not bought and sold. Humans are not objects to be only used and abused for temporary enjoyment. Parents must provide sex education for their children, and it should be age-appropriate information that includes skills and attitudes. Because if parents do not educate their children, where will they get their information from? From the schools, which we don't know their curriculum, and from their peers who are as ignorant as they are. So they really get the wrong information. Importance of developing proper attitudes towards sex. It should never involve violence. It should be between husband and wife only, based on a mutual love, respect, and understanding. So, parents have responsibility in educating and preventing pornography. Children, long before they become wives and husbands, must be fully convinced of the attitude towards sex that is based on mutual satisfaction, the fulfillment of a duty, and the needs of your spouse. Another aspect, parents, it's about faith and values. Parents should focus on strong faith. The single most important way to vaccinate children against pornography is to instill in them an unshakable belief in Allah and the revelations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, you try to make internal policing in the child when he has fear of Allah, and it will be the best protection for him, the strongest protection. A strong believer can resist all temptations. A weak believer, no matter how much knowledge they possess, will find it much harder, if not impossible, to resist pornography. Because it is so tempting, the way it's presenting, so enjoyable, so tempting. A focus on values, respect for both women and men, one's another's body, and ability to judge right from wrong. We must have respect for our own and others' sexuality. Showing your naked body to your spouse is right. Showing your naked body to a medical professional giving medical necessary is right. Showing your naked body to anybody else is wrong and haram. looking at the naked body of others is wrong. Lust is a natural human desire that emanates from the hormones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put into our bodies. However, Allah teaches us that lust must be controlled. Lust should only be for your spouse and no one else. Islam has given us the right concept of everything. For example, we have so many desires, so we have so many needs, we have so many inclinations that Allah has created in us. For example, if I ask you, do you love money? Yeah, I have asked these questions to many of our trainees, in different, many of them hesitate. So this is an unusual problem. It needs unusual solutions. Big problem and it needs big solution. So parents are not enough to deal with this. There are so many other factors that interfere in the upbringing of our children, so many. And in fact, there is always now some of you who are specialists in this area, which is more important, which has more effect and impact on the children. Is it the parents or the schools and the environment? In fact, they have not come to a real conclusion. I mean, you say 49, 51, 50, 50, still the debate is going on. So it is so important that we don't only stay with the parents, but we go to the schools also, school programs. So that's number two. Number one, parents. Number two, schools. Schools must have an Islamic sex education program that supports and reinforces parental sex education at home. They must share with them ways to avoid pornography or what could lead to it. In other words, what the child learns at home should be approved or strengthened by what they learn at school, not contradictory. Otherwise, the child will be confused. He doesn't know what is right or wrong. Schools should also teach children when touching by any adult is appropriate, when an adult is appropriate, not and when it is inappropriate. Touching. The children should be told what is appropriate touching by whom and what is inappropriate. Allah has instilled in the human body desires and shapes and organs that are something to be thankful to Allah for, not to be scared of or embarrassed by. In other words, we should admit our nature and our fitra and our innate desires and so on. Schools must make it clear to children that we should not be ashamed of our bodies and the changes that occur to our bodies. Some students are endowed by Allah with bigger bodies, some with smaller bodies. Some are more attractive, some are less attractive, some are taller, some are shorter. All of these physical manifestations do not matter to Allah. What matters to Allah is, at all times, is in all places, is our behavior. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حديث شريف إن الله لا ينظر إلى أجسامكم وصوركم ولكن ينظر إلى أعمالكم. The Prophet ﷺ tells us Allah will not look at your clothes or your shape and so on, but He looks at your deeds, at your action. Schools, they should have, skills and application. Schools must teach children practical skills for dealing with members of the opposite sex. Conversations must never be lewd or indecent, or with the intention of heightening sexual attraction. Subhanallah, this is also part of our nature. Even a smell, will make us more excited. It brings the hormone, or a picture, or a story, or even some imagination. That's the problem. It can bring more hormones into this direction. So we have to, admit it and recognize it. Men and women must support and empower each other. Men and women must not flirt with each other to increase their sexual desires. Both men and women must wear modest clothing. Now, brothers and sisters, we see every day on the TV some sexual harassment, and the courts are full of these suits. When you see the women who are accusing some of these men, you look at them, they are dressed in such an attractive, tempting way that it becomes very, very difficult for any normal man not to harass such appearance. They look so beautiful, so much, makeup, very less, etc. As you can see on the TV. So we blame the men, of course, they should have. But you put meat in front of a hungry cat, what will happen? How can? And you know the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. He was in a similar situation, but Allah saved him. لولا أن رأى, because sex attraction and hormones are so strong, especially in men, that you need a lot of help to protect yourself from the haram. And that's the beauty of Islam. It has prevented all these ways and methods of leading to commit sex. It prevents it, you know. Prevention is much more effective than treatment and the cure. Children have to be able to identify sexual predators. They should know how to avoid them and report them. So for the schools, children must understand the negative results of participating in pornography, infectious diseases, and societal punishment. Hospital wards where sexually transmitted diseases are treated, police stations and the prisons where pedophiles, sexual deviants, and children and child molesters are removed from society and punished. You know, it will be a good lesson for the parents and the schools to take their children and expose them, show them the hospital beds of sexually transmitted diseases, or the prisons where these sexual predators are living, and so on. So, to give them the real feeling of what happens to those who commit sins. Is okay? Okay, we talked about parents now, and we talked about schools. Now let us talk about mosques. Okay? It's okay now? Imams and community leaders must provide community-wide leadership on the issue of pornography and its effects. Imam must educate parents and children on the issue and use trained experts to show how to identify pornography and avoid it. Now, in this day and age, the duty of the Imam is not just to lead the Salah and say the Friday khutbah and so on. They should have so many other skills, especially counseling on marriage, divorce, children, and all this is so important. So, we don't expect every Imam who is graduate from Sharia college 4 years to know many things. In fact, let me tell you, they know very little, but it's essential, okay? However, we ask them, in their imamship of the mosque, they rely on experts from the society to tell about these issues to the children and to the people. Muslim community centers must involve in police and the medical community in anti-pornography campaigns. Prevention is always better than the cure. Community centers must provide counseling and guidance to victims and their families. Identify best professionals to help the child and their families, including sex therapists, psychologists, and properly trained imams. As we said, this is not only particular to any faith or religion or sect. It is invading all across faiths and gender and so on. So what do you do? This is another tool. You build coalitions with other groups, because no parents want his child to be fallen in the pornography. So we have to cooperate with other faith communities to help collectively combat this destructive epidemic. After all, other faiths are also struggling with this society-wide evil. Support groups who are advocating for the rights of women. This epidemic can become an opportunity to collaborate with those who are working against female sexual trafficking and sexual exploitation by criminals. Groups that are working to combat corporate greed or reduce poverty. Explicit and sexual advertising and media, a very profitable business, contributes to perpetuation of pornography. We must also recognize that many of the people who end up in the pornography industry are people who are desperate to stay alive. Countering pornography. Outlets. Number one, hiding male sexual energy or acting as if it doesn't exist is a denial of Allah's creation and a huge disservice to men in our society. Allah has instilled in men natural sexual desires. Some legitimate outlets for a high amount of energy and desire that their bodies generate, like engage them in sports, outdoor activities, self-help groups, intellectual pursuit and travels, and also in Islam we have fasting, and we have fasting a song. It will help a lot. There is no substitute, sisters and brothers, to parents' action. A warm and communicative parent-child relationship is the most important factor in reducing porn use among children. In addition, open parent-child channels for communicating about sexual and media experiences, sex education at home or school, and parental participation with children on the internet are constructive influences. Finally, parents should carefully monitor and severely limit access to pornography on file sharing networks and elsewhere. I tell you another example. In our area in Virginia, there was a case. Actually, my son Hassan brought the chief of the police to educate us how we should know what our children do. So this chief of police told us a real story that there were many stealings in the community and they were looking for who is doing it. So finally they have identified one child in like 7th grade or 8th grade. So they went to his home, and they met the parents, and they told them, you know, we have a suspicion that your child is actually stealing, videos, expensive watches, telephone, all these things, expensive ones. So the parents said, impossible. Our child can never do that. We know him. I said, okay, fine. Can we please see his room? He said, yes, but we don't have the key. The child has the key. So, but they said we have an order from the judge that we can break in his room. So finally they went into the room and they saw many of those stolen articles and things. So this is, important that, so the parents said, but we want to give him privacy, okay? And we cannot tell him no, and we did not know about this. So the chief of police said, yes, you give him privacy, but this is your home. You are responsible for this. And in your home, you are the king of your home, the king of this castle, and you have rules. You set rules for your children, even for the visitors, for the guests. There are rules in every home that should be followed. You cannot just allow him to lock his room and do anything, and that's what the result can happen. So, this, as we said, this is not a normal problem. It's a big problem, and we have to have collective cooperation between all entities. Collective responsibility. Parents, schools, and community leaders must work collectively through planned and coordinated efforts to combat this destructive and growing epidemic. It is stripping away our children's innocence, modesty, value, and lives, and pushing them toward darkness and despair. Large-scale efforts have to be made to squeeze the pornography industry from the source by actually enacting some rules and policies in the country to prevent this, or at least to make it very, very difficult for children to get access to pornography. The problem is access. So easy access. Free. You get all this free. You go to the cinema, you pay a few ringgits, but this is free, and so that's very important, the access. And it is so much highly commercialized that there are billions and billions and billions of dollars being won from this by exploiting women and children for this pornography. It's not an easy task. We must make dua to save ourselves from our families from this terrible and rampant disease, and to eradicate it from the face of this earth. It is so important to inform the children the nature of this and the impact and the result of such actions, because many of the children do not know the real issue of what they are seeing, and in these movies and YouTube and so on, they see, children and women and group sex and all this, and they think it's nice, but they don't know these people are actually being enslaved in order for the corporation to gain money on their moderation. Okay, is so important. Balanced moderation, and that's what Islam tells us. There is a very nice hadith that conveys a lot, and that is, 3 men came knocking at the door of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of them said, "O Prophet of Allah, I fast every day. I don't break my fast." The second one said, "Ya Rasulullah, I always have qiyam and sujood and salah at night, every night." The third one said, "Ya Rasulullah, I avoid sex, I don't get married." So listening to them, Rasulullah said, "Look here, I am the most pious among all of you. But some days I fast, sometimes I don't. Some nights I pray, some nights I sleep. And I get married. And this is my way of life, balanced way of life, that conforms with the fitra, with the natural, pure, innate of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is my way, and whoever deviates from my way is not really following the right thing. So let us say, stop pornography, stop pornography, stop pornography. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hisham, for addressing a very
2 years class, knowing how to actually, when they know how to speak, we actually